Hi and welcome to the Global Travel Planner Podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Collins, who with my expert guests takes you on a journey to destinations around the globe, providing itinerary ideas, practical tips and more to help you plan your next travel adventure. Hi and welcome to the Global Travel Planner Podcast. This is episode 2, where we're going to be chatting about our recent trip to New Zealand, which was in September 2023. With my husband Doug. So he's going to be here and having a chat with you too to share about our thoughts about visiting New Zealand for the first time, because this was our first visit ever for both of us. And we're going to be talking about, in this episode, our North Island, New Zealand road trip, which is our 5-day itinerary. So we'll kind of talk about our thoughts and reflections as first-time visitors to New Zealand, which, you know, if it's going to be your first trip, you might find useful. And then we'll talk through our 5-day itinerary. So this is the first part. The second part, which will be episode 3 of the Global Travel Planner Podcast, will be the second part of our road trip, which was actually through South Island, New Zealand. But to say for this episode, myself and Doug are going to concentrate on looking at our itinerary and our thoughts actually on our first visit to New Zealand, which I have to say completely blew us away. Beautiful, beautiful destination. So for this first part of this podcast, really, it's our thoughts and reflections from our trip as first-time visitors. So I'll kind of start by introducing my husband, Doug, who came along on the trip with me.
Hello, good to be here.
So we thought it would be a good way to kind of have a conversation about the things that kind of struck us. As I say, first-time visitors. We'd not been. We live in Australia, but we hadn't been across the ditch, as they say in Australia and New Zealand. We hadn't gone across to New Zealand. And honestly, it kind of really was a fantastic experience, wasn't it?
It certainly was. It heard such a lot about New Zealand. We work with a lot of people from New Zealand here in Australia. And so we're so keen to get there. We've been sort of putting it off, but we eventually planned it and got there, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I think it was kind of one of those last-minute decisions, let's go to New Zealand. So that's what we did. So I think one of the first things that struck both of us was just how incredibly friendly, open, helpful, and welcoming the people in New Zealand were.
They certainly were. As soon as we got off the plane, there's people welcoming you, all the statues and Maori statues as you walk through the arrivals at Auckland Airport. And it's not quite overwhelming, but it's something special.
Oh, yeah, very special. I think I'll always remember that because it was just such a lovely welcome. So we did a road trip in both North Island and South Island. So I think some things to consider if this is what you're planning to do. And I know obviously camper van travel is very popular in New Zealand. We decided not to do a camper van. We actually hired a car and stayed in a hotel and guest house, B&B type accommodation, which we absolutely loved. But obviously we know a lot of people, and we saw a lot of camper vans. Certainly in the South Island, we saw a lot. So I think one of the tips that we want to say, and one thing that we did consider and we are aware of is actually that you need to book in advance for popular destinations. Places like Hobbiton do get booked up, and even some of the tours that I actually want to do and some of the trips that I'd like to have taken part in were actually fully booked, so we couldn't do that. So I think you need to plan ahead before you go.
Yeah, and particularly, as you said, petrol's being so expensive there, you really don't want to be wasting any of that petrol, so it's important you plan your route in advance. Yeah,
absolutely. So we basically, I will talk in a bit more detail about our itinerary, but we basically started in Auckland and ended in Auckland 5 days later and managed to fit in Matamata and Rotorua, which were the two kind of destinations we chose.
It is. Once we arrived, we didn't hire a car straight away. We had a day in Auckland first, and then we hired a car. We went back to the airport to collect the car, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. So we're going to talk in more detail about that in a second. So I think one of the other things that we kind of realised was that the weather is changeable very quickly.
We did notice that.
I mean, really, if it's a clear day to do an activity, for example, the Huka Valley Trail in South Island, we were very lucky in that the day before it was too windy and that was closed. The day after, I think it was closed. We were very lucky. So you've got to kind of take the weather as it comes and actually get out there and do things. Obviously, it's difficult when you've got activities planned if the weather's not great. We were very lucky at Hobbiton again because the weather was outstanding. Yeah. But do make sure that you pack for the weather. Obviously, we were there in September, so it's that kind of winter going into autumn. Spring, you could going into spring, I should say, winter going into spring. I don't know why I said autumn. Winter going into spring, and you could see, the blossom on the trees, and it was starting to get warmer. Certainly, I mean, I was over there for a month altogether, and I could see definitely, the warmth coming through. But you need to really think about packing layers, waterproof shoes, coat, hat, gloves, particularly for the South Island where it was colder.
Well, it's one thing we did notice as well was the food, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, the food was fantastic.
Oh yes, we tried a lot of different things. I can't even remember everything we tried, but there's some things we just.
I know you particularly enjoyed the salmon.
Oh yeah, the salmon was outstanding. Yeah, how could I forget that?
Yeah, and I know you enjoyed the pies were really good.
Yeah, the pies, the fillings, the pastry, everything.
We had some really good, really good meals. So I will say that actually we have written up both itineraries. The North Island, New Zealand road trip itinerary is available. So obviously we're going to go through that in a second in a bit more detail. But and we actually do mention the different restaurants and places that we ate at. So I think without further ado, we'll start talking about our itinerary. Okay, so bear in mind our itinerary is based over 5 days, which I know is a very short time to see North Island. And obviously we didn't see all of North Island. That would be impossible in 5 days. So what we did is chose the things that we really wanted to see in that time. So we flew in from Brisbane on the Sunday evening, got in, I think it was about 8 o'clock. So we had organised a private transfer. There are a variety of ways to get in from Auckland International Airport into Auckland itself, which is basically 17 miles, 27 kilometres from the CBD. So you can organise a private transfer, which is what we did, which we found easiest. There is some public transport, bus and a train, or the SkyDrive options as well. That you can take. But honestly, I would do a little bit of research to figure out what time you get in and what's going to work best for you. So obviously in that first evening, we just headed we got a private transfer and headed to the hotel. So we stayed at the Marriott in Auckland. So I remember actually first impressions for me was that it was cold because we were flying from Australia where it was a little bit warmer. And also I don't know why, I did not expect Auckland to be as hilly as it was. So that just shows you I should have done a little bit more research before I arrived into Auckland itself. Did research about the destinations, but Auckland definitely was that kind of took me by surprise. So that was our first evening, so really not up to much. So really the itinerary kind of kicks in on the next day. So I kind of call that day one, really. So on day one, we were in Auckland. So on that day...
Well, the first thing we did was look what the weather was doing to start with, and then we looked at the hop-on, hop-off bus and where we could pick it up from close to where we were staying. And then we picked out our destinations we most liked the look of, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then we walked to the Sky Tower, which was about 5 minutes from where we were staying, and we talked to the most lovely lady there who worked out the best deal for the hop-on and some of the inclusive combination tickets, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And so, I mean, that hop-on, hop-off bus operates between 9 and 4, so 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. So the last bus terminates at 5. And there's every stop, there's every 30 minutes, there'll be a bus that goes past. So we found that was actually the best way for us. So we decided to buy combo tickets, which included the Auckland War Memorial Museum, the All Blacks experience, and the Sky Tower. So we only had 1 day in Auckland. So again, when you're only 1 day in a place, you actually have to choose the places that kind of speak to you and that you want to go to. And obviously the bus was the best way for us to get around and see all those places.
That's right. And we thought the best way to familiarise ourselves with a bit of New Zealand tradition and history was to head to the museum, Auckland Museum first.
Yeah.
And that was a good choice.
It was. And we spent about 2.5 hours in the museum. We could actually have spent longer in there, I must admit. But it was really interesting. The museum is spread over 3 floors. The ground floor is dedicated to Our People and Place, is what it's called. Level 1 is Our World, and level 2 is War and Remembrance. We did manage to get around all of the museum, and the highlights for us, I think, were the Maori Court, the volcanoes section, which is was fascinating too, the Maori natural history, and the origins section, particularly the birds, which I found absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, the World War I and World War II Hall of Memories are definitely humbling and thought-provoking. Yeah. So that was our first destination. We actually had lunch there. And then we waited, as I hopped on the bus, didn't we? Headed to where you had highlighted as somewhere that you wanted to go to.
Yeah, that's the All Black experience. I really want to do that. The All Blacks are the name of the famous New Zealand rugby union team. The museum's located in the Sky City precinct, right next to the Sky Towers. It's easily found. And we took the tour there, and it was the entire history of the All Black team. Obviously, they dwelled on the massive successes of the team. But the highlight really was on this big screen standing in front of the haka, the traditional start of a rugby union match involving the All Blacks. So there was two hakas. There's one with the ladies' team and then one with the men's team. And it was incredibly powerful and moving.
It was actually. I wasn't even that keen on going to All Blacks because I'm not really a rugby fan, but I absolutely loved it. I mean, it left us, seeing the haka was amazing. It left us both speechless, really. It was incredibly powerful. But I think the fun thing about the whole experience is that it's interactive. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. So highly recommend that, if you are interested in rugby and the All Blacks, then go and enjoy the experience.
Yeah, it's suitable for all ages. There is some children in there, and it's something for everyone.
Yeah, really absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So after that, our final destination for that day was the Auckland Sky Tower. So we decided to enjoy both the day and evening views, and so we were there for about an hour and a half. So we actually spent, so to give you a kind of overview, we spent 2.5 hours or so at the Auckland War Memorial Museum, and then we were at the All Blacks experience again for about 90 minutes. And then we were at the Auckland Sky Tower for about 90 minutes. Obviously, you've got to take the bus in between to get between these places. So the Sky Tower was opened in 1997 and was until 2022 the tallest building in the Southern Hemisphere at 328 metres high. So the first thing we did was ascend to level 51, which is 186 metres, the main observation level. And then we changed lifts to go up to the sky deck at level 60, which is at 220 metres. I felt like it was swaying a little bit at that level.
It was. It definitely was.
So at level 50 is the recently opened Sky Bar, but I would check the opening hours for that. It was actually closed when we were there. And if you're an adrenaline junkie, there are lots to do there, including a skywalk or the sky jump. I will say that neither of us did that.
No, we didn't. We watched others do it.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, somebody coming off this side of the town. I cannot believe that they edged out backwards before the ascent.
Oh,
I was getting nervous watching them.
Oh no! So yeah, it was lovely seeing the sunset as well. You get great views over Auckland, so highly recommend it. And as I say, that was all part of our hop on, hop off bus combo ticket, which worked out cost effective for us. So that was basically the end of our first full day in Auckland. So day 2, we decided, or we had booked to drive from Auckland to Matamata to go to Hobbiton. So we'd hired a car via Discover Cars, and we picked it up at Auckland International Airport. So we did hire a taxi from the hotel and went out to Auckland International Airport to pick up the car, which is fairly easy. So the drive time that day was 2 hours, 12 minutes to the B&B, which was only just 8 to 10 minutes past Hobbiton. Yeah. Drive time to Hobbiton was 2 hours, just over 2 hours. And we'd booked Hobbiton for 3:10. And you've got to be there 20 minutes before the tour starts. So, that was one of the things that we absolutely had to book. And then in the evening, we went to Matamata and we ate at a lovely restaurant, which we both loved, called the Redoubt Bar and Eatery. I'd highly recommended the pork belly bites. They were amazing. Definitely. So basically, day 2, we had allocated a visit to one destination only. So if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, I guess Hobbiton is going to be the place that you want to go to. And it's somewhere that I'd dreamed about going to for a long time. Again, it's really popular, so make sure that you book tickets. The popular tour with the Hobbit banquet was sold out on the one day that we could do it. So if that's something you want to do, you really, really recommend that you do it. So I'll quickly just mention where we stayed. So we stayed at the Cozy Country Stay B&B, which was beautiful, lovely, fantastic place to stay. I'll put some pictures in the show notes so you can have a look. Highly recommend it. It was 8-minute drive to Hobbiton. So Doug's going to kind of talk a little bit about kind of tips if you are, tips and facts for those of you who are going to go to Hobbiton.
Most definitely, yeah. The Hobbiton Visitor Centre is conveniently located on the main road. But we did find some of the best viewing points was slightly past from where we were staying. So look at the terrain there and the area, absolutely stunning photos. But yeah, the visitor centre, plenty of parking there. And as you're driving through that countryside all around there, there's plenty of designated viewing areas on both sides of the road. So allow yourself plenty of time when you're heading there to give yourself time to stop off and take a few photos. But once you arrive at the visitor centre, you go inside and you are issued with your ticket from your reservation. And as you'd expect to find these places, there's toilets and cafes and a very, very well stocked gift shop with all things related.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's plenty. I mean, we were there, I would say, about 20 minutes before, and there's a great place where you can have a photo taken with the Hobbiton in the background, like board. Yes. Again, I'll put in the show notes. So obviously, it's a must do. If you're there, you're going to have your photo there. And then after that, you transfer in a coach to Hobbiton itself, which is a 5 minutes drive. And your tour guide will be with you for the duration of the tour. And she was very good, wasn't it? She gave us a lot of background.
Yeah, she was very enthusiastic. Clearly a massive fan. And she was funny.
Yeah, she was. So actually, when you arrive at Hobbiton, you're guided around the set. You find out lots of information and anecdotes along the way. And there's plenty of opportunity to take photos. I think I've took about, 800.
Yes, and she was telling you the best places for photos as well.
Yeah, she did, which was excellent. And I have to say, we were incredibly lucky because we had beautiful blue skies and sunshine that the day we visited, so which was great. I mean, wear comfortable shoes because obviously you're walking around Hobbiton, so, up and down the kind of hills. The tour of the set ends at the Green Dragon Inn, of course, where you get a complimentary drink, so alcoholic or non-alcoholic choices, and plenty of time to take more photos before you head back to the coach and transfer at the visitor centre.
That's it. And there's also a little bit of food there as well. You can buy some pies and bits and pieces.
Cake and things like that. Yeah, so you can do that. So, I mean, I know we were the last tour of the day, and after that they were setting up for the banquet. So basically, we got back to the car park. We, headed back to the accommodation, got ourselves sorted for the evening, decided that we would go to Mata Mata to have a meal, which is what we did, as I mentioned earlier. Really enjoyed it. I don't know if it's a Redoubt bar or the Redoubt bar. Redoubt bar.
Yeah.
And eatery, which honestly highly recommend it. So if you're going to Hobbiton, you're going to stay the evening. I recommend staying at the Cozy Country Stay B&B and going to eat at the Redoubt bar.
We didn't have a booking there. We just turned up. And they're very accommodating.
Yeah, so that was the end of kind of day 2. So day 3, we decided to head to Rotorua, which is somewhere that I'd always wanted to go and see. I mean, I'm sure if you've seen the hot geysers on television, you'll know exactly why we were really interested in heading to that area. So yeah, it was fantastic. We absolutely, I have to say that I loved Rotorua.
Oh, it's a stunning area. Absolutely stunning.
Yeah, so we'd booked accommodation in Rotorua for 2 nights, and we stayed in the Karanda B&B, which was fabulous. I cannot tell you how amazing it was.
Home from home.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Ron and Leslie, who own it and run it, were so welcoming. And honestly, it's one of the best B&Bs we have ever stayed in.
The most well-equipped, certainly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was beautiful, spacious, luxuriously decorated, and actually quite simply perfect. It was a 10 out of 10 for us. And the gorgeous views over Rotorua, again, were absolutely outstanding. So obviously we had scheduled the morning to drive to Rotorua, but we had some activities. So the activities that we had planned that day were basically to go to Te Puia, excuse my pronunciation, Geothermal Valley on a guided tour. That was our first thing that we did. And then that evening, we had the Mitai Maori Village cultural experience and dinner buffet. And dinner was included in the village experience. So those were the things that we had planned. Once we got to the B&B, checked in, left our luggage, then we headed straight away for the Geothermal Valley guided tour. So, yeah, we headed for Te Puia, first of all, where we had booked timed slot tickets through Get Your Guide. I mean, a guided tour is the best way to learn about the history of the area from the guides. And our guide, Kahu, whose family has lived in that valley for over 1,000 years, was fantastic. What an amazing and really inspiration. She was lovely. We were a little bit early, so there is a cafe and a shop that if you need to, if you get there early, just go and have a cup of tea or whatever. Plenty of parking. So we had an introduction, I say, from our guide, Kahoot, who talked us through about what we're going to see. So you've got mud pools, heated pool and geysers. And the largest active geyser in the valley is the Pohutu geyser. We were all anticipating an eruption of water up to 30 meters high. And actually, we were not disappointed. Though Kahoot does point out that she has no control over the geyser, so it cannot be guaranteed. So Te Ipuia means hot spring. You'll also find the Kiwi Centre and New Zealand Maori Arts and Crafts Centre there, which was amazing. We went to the Kiwi Centre, saw 2 kiwis, first time I'd ever seen a kiwi in my life, which was amazing. Obviously, kiwi is New Zealand's national bird, and they're actively involved in conservation efforts to keep the kiwi bird from becoming extinct. And the other area that you will visit is the New Zealand Maori Arts and Crafts Centre, which is a weaving and carving school which teaches the ancient traditions and skills to ensure these are passed on to future generations. So during the tour, you have the opportunity to actually watch the students at work and even ask questions.
And they were very, very obliging and happy to ask questions.
Answer questions. Yeah. So then after that, we did head back to the B&B and get changed, but that evening we were at the Mitai Maori village for the cultural experience.
That's right, and that was for 3 hours the experience was going to be, and it was a complete education. It really was, and we arrived. You had to be there 30 minutes beforehand for the welcome and to collect your tickets, and then there's a bit of a question and answer session as regards what the evening will entail, and then everybody puts the coats on, and we head out to watch a war canoe on the river.
Yep,
and that is absolutely, you feel like you're stepping back in time. It was just so visually stunning.
Yeah,
I suppose
it was
the best
excellent.
thing. But be careful that you need some flat shoes because the walk to the river is pretty dark and a little bit difficult underfoot.
Yeah.
But it's well worth it. And then you'll walk back to the meeting house again, and we had the meal was cooked in the traditional way with hole in the ground. I'm sure there's a proper name, but escapes me. The food was delicious as well, wasn't it?
Oh, it was amazing. I should just say that after we saw the warriors chanting and paddling down the river, we actually did go and see dancing as well.
I was just coming to that, and the same between the two, we watched the show.
Yeah,
a traditional show where it's dancing and singing and chants, and it was a storytelling.
Yeah, it was very, very good. And then after that, there was another question and answer session after the meal. So the meal was fine. I found the food was very tasty. You know, you can also, if you want a drink, you can buy alcohol at the bar. There is a bar open there. I will say that you will be sat at a table with strangers, but we found everybody really friendly, and it was really interesting to meet people from all over the world.
That certainly was, yeah. And then that followed, there was a question and answer session and some very, very probing questions.
Yeah.
And the compere was very happy to answer every single one of them. And then there was options afterwards to go and look at some glowworms.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Which we did opt out of that time because we were getting a bit tired. But obviously, it's something that if you want to do that, you can do that. So that was the end of day 3. So day 4 was going to be our last full day in Rotorua. So I had planned some activities that day. So I'd booked a visit to the National Kiwi Hatchery Centre, which we did first thing at 10 a.m. And then I'd also booked to go to the geothermal hot springs that evening as well. So kind of bought an open day ticket for that. So we did have a gap because I wasn't sure what else to do that day. So we decided to go to Wai-o-tapu, which absolutely, I think, just blew my mind. It was absolutely amazing. Geothermal wonderland is absolutely the way to describe it. But
it really was a wonderland.
Oh, yeah, incredible. Absolutely incredible. I can't wait to go back. It's one of those places that I will go back to over and over again just to see it. It was fantastic. So I don't know if you want to talk about the kind of the National Kiwi Hatchery, which is where we went first.
That was so interesting as well. We had a walk around. It took we had a time slot for 10 a.m. and it takes about 45 minutes. when you learn all about the breeding and the eggs and the incubation and the collection of the eggs, which was absolutely fascinating. And then one of the experts there told us all about the species, how it's protected, and what measures they are putting in place to try and reduce the decline in numbers.
Yeah, because it was actually quite shocking to know 50% of newly hatched kiwi chicks are actually killed by stoats, which is obviously it's an introduced species, mammals that were introduced into New Zealand, which have managing to decimate the bird population. Because obviously in New Zealand, a lot of the birds are flightless, so they are defenseless against animals like stoats.
Which is why we were very keen to sort of contribute our admission to support all the work that they do.
Absolutely. And if you haven't seen a kiwi by this point, there's an opportunity to see the resident adult kiwi during the tour. Obviously, we were there pre-hatching, and I think they did have some eggs in at that point, which was quite early, I think they mentioned. So I'm sure as the breeding season continues and they get more eggs, and you may have the opportunity to see chicks, which we didn't, which is absolutely fine. So after that, we decided to go to Wai-o-tapu, which is it's a 30-minute drive outside of Rotorua. But the place is incredible, totally awe-inspiring, unlike anything I've seen on Earth before. So it's one of the most active geothermal areas in New Zealand. So you've got colourful pools, geysers, and a lake, which just make this absolutely a photographer's dream. Again, I took so many photos, absolutely so many photos of that. So highlights of that include the champagne pool, Devil's Bathtub, the largest mud pool in New Zealand. It's open 7 days a week from 8:30 to 4:30. I think the last admittance is 3. Make sure you wear sensible shoes because there's a lot of steps to negotiate further on in the park. You need to follow the boardwalks. You will receive a map. The trails are well signposted, so you won't get lost. So when I headed out, I wasn't sure whether I was going to do all the trails, but there's absolutely no way I wasn't going to do the trails once we started.
Yes, and it can get a bit warm, even because of the hot geysers. It can get a bit warm. We're both a bit hot by the time we were walking around, weren't we?
Yeah, we were actually, obviously because you're surrounded by kind of hot water.
Very hot water, yeah.
So the walk, there's 3 walking trails, which take about 90 minutes in all to do the 3. So also famous at Wai-o-tapu is the Lady Knox geyser, which erupts at around 10 a.m. or 10 a.m. each day. I think it's that predictable. So if you want to see that, don't do what we did and book the National Kiwi Hatchery for that time, because then it meant that we actually missed the geyser. So that's something we will definitely go back to do. Time to do that. Make sure that if you're going to do this, take a refillable water bottle and fill up just outside the visitor centre. There is a cafe, gift shop, toilets at the main entrance, and obviously there is parking, but I can imagine it would get busy. So arrive earlier in the day during peak season, which kind of would fit in if you're going to go and see the Lady Knox geyser anyway. But it was stunning, actually visually stunning, just an incredible place to visit, actually.
Yeah.
So after that, we had our last activity that we planned in Rotorua, and actually it was the perfect way to end what was going to, because the next day we were going to the airport. So this was actually the perfect way to kind of end our few days in North Island, wasn't it?
It certainly was. It was... perfect location as well, because we're right next to the lake.
Yeah, so we had booked a few hours at the Polynesian Spa. So the Rotorua Lake Geothermal Hot Springs. Well, what can I say? As soon as I stepped outside and saw the hot pools, I was like, yeah, this is absolutely perfect. So the spa is fed by 2 hot springs, the Priest Spring and the Rachel Spring, and they feed 28 hot mineral pools. So the acidic nature of the Priest Spring helps relieve aches and pains, and the alkaline nature of the Rachel Spring nourishes the skin. So we'd booked the Deluxe Lake Spa experience, which enables access to 5 pools, 4 hot Rachel Spring fed pools of varying temperatures, and 1 hot Priest Spring fed pool. There's also a cold plunge pool, which I didn't go into, but Doug did.
I was brave enough to drop in, and I learned a few new words. I didn't know that I actually knew them, and it was
very cold.
It was extremely cold. Yeah.
Also, the thermally heated recliners were a hit too. I mean, with fantastic views over the lake. They are ideal to relax on when taking a break from the heat of the pools, because obviously, you have to be careful. You're going to spend too long in the pools, and they do warn you of that. The reception is kind of saying, be careful about how long you spend in them. So I think if you're going to visit, I think things that are important to know is that you do, the lake spa experience includes access to changing facilities, perfect changing rooms are fantastic, secure lockers. You get towels are provided. There's soap, shampoo, and hair dryers. Obviously, bring a swimming costume, bathers, and flip flops. Though apparently you can hire swim costumes there if you need to.
But the most important thing is being a refillable water bottle, because with all that heat and that hot water, it's important to stay hydrated.
Absolutely. So that was our last stop of the day. But obviously after that we were a little bit peckish. So we headed to Eat Street. So there's an Eat Street Rotorua. We're used to that in Brisbane, but there's an Eat Street Rotorua with plenty of dining options. So we chose to eat the CBK Craft Bar and Kitchen, which we'd recommend. That was, again, another delicious meal.
It really was beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the end of day 4. So day 5, another full day, I guess, is we were heading back to Auckland. So a bit sad, really, at that point.
It was, but we allowed ourselves plenty of time. We planned the route and...
We did. Yeah. So basically, it's a 2-hour, 30 minutes from Rotorua to Auckland International Airport. So Doug was flying back to Brisbane, and I was actually flying down to Christchurch to South Island, where I was doing a house sit, which I will talk about in a future episode of kind of how to house sit and the advantages of house sitting. So I was actually house sitting in Christchurch for a few weeks. But obviously, it was a really easy drive back to Auckland International, no problem whatsoever. Dropped the car off and took off on
we eventually found a petrol station.
Yes. Just be careful when you're driving back that you find it's not necessarily obvious the way that we drove anyway through the petrol station. So obviously, you want to drop your car off fully with full level of fuel in it. Yeah, so basically, I guess that day 5 was more just, it was a full day driving back to Auckland and leaving. So we had basically 4 full days. We had, the first day in Auckland, second day in Matamata, and days 3 and 4 in Rotorua. So that gives you kind of an overview of what we did. We have a fully detailed itinerary, which includes links to the places we stayed, the different activities we took part in, on our website. So they will be on the show notes for this episode. So that'll be at tracy'stravelsintime.com/episode 2. So do pop over there so you can find links, as I say, to all the different places that we stayed and to that article, which really gives a fuller kind of information about all the places that we stayed. But I just want to say, I guess from us, it's just thanks for tuning in for this episode. And all I've got to say is happy global travel planning.